introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks. So I'm Prabhat. I'm the Director of Security Architecture at WS02. And so I joined WS02 like 8 years back. And since then I've been working on the WS02 Identity Server product. So let me quickly introduce WS02 to you. So WS02 is a company which produces a set of products to address different aspects or concerns in connected business. And we have about 20 products which run on-premise as well as on cloud. And everything what we do is open source. And we follow the Apache model, the Apache way of doing things. So everything, all the discussions, the development mailing list, architectural mailing list, so everything we discuss openly, and anybody can contribute to our code. And all our products are released under Apache 2.0 license, so that's the most business friendly license. So you can download it, do any changes, and even ship it as your own proprietary products. Okay. So Identity Server is an open source identity and entitlement management server. So we'll look into each and every word here and try to understand them better. And once again, please feel free to ask any questions in the middle. Yes. So one aspect of identity is authentication. How you authenticate users, how you find out who the users are, what they claim to be. So you can deploy Identity Server over an existing user store. It can be over LDAP, Active Directory, JDBC, and so we have customers running on Microsoft Active Directory, Novell Directory, Apache DS. Apache DS is not that production ready, and mostly like Open LDAP, Oracle DS, like that. And for JDBC, we do support MySQL, Oracle, MS SQL. So basically, any database having a JDBC driver. Also, it's not just a one user store. You can also configure multiple user stores against Identity Server. So one user store can be an LDAP, another can be an Active Directory, another can be MySQL. Also, the beauty of the Identity Server, or one of the key advantage of Identity Server, is its extensibility. Even though we out of the box support these three types of connections, if you need to have your own type of user store that supports its own set of like proprietary protocol to expose user data out, then you can write your own custom user store manager. So we in fact did that for a customer. I don't think I can tell the name, but they are like very large mobile navigation app developer, and they wanted to expand into China, and they were expecting a user base around 800 million. So they were not happy to go ahead with MySQL based user store. They wanted to have Cassandra user store. So they wrote a custom user store manager to the Identity Server to connect to a Cassandra data store. So likewise, you can extend the behavior of the user store of the Identity Server. Then again, so this is the concept of the identity as a service. So the WS02 Identity Server exposes the user's identity management functionalities as a service to the outside applications. This can be mobile apps, web apps, so they can just authenticate users or manage users, like creating users, deleting users, create roles, assign roles to users, like all the aspects of users through set of APIs. So we have a SOAP API as well as a REST API. So the beauty here is the external applications need not to worry about how to handle the underneath the protocols. They need not to worry about the complexities associated with LDAP, Active Directory, or JDBC. And also you can seamlessly change like those data stores or user stores transparent to the top level application. So this is once again a key use case of the WS02 Identity Server. One example is if you go to AAAlife.com, today, all the sign up authentication. So they have their own web app running in their own application server, but underneath it talks to Identity Server's APIs. Yeah, so this is what I explained before. So Identity Server exposes the identity management functionalities as a service to the top level applications. It can be mobile or web, any type of application. It's over both REST and SOAP. So you can just talk it, and Identity Server would handle the underneath complexities. You can connect to any of these user stores, either one user store or multiple user stores. And like when you connect to multiple user stores, you can each user store we mount the Identity Server with a unique name, with a domain name. So if you want your users to authenticate against that particular user store, then you need to qualify your username with that domain name. If not, if you just enter the username, then we do authentication in a chain. So you first authenticate with the first user store. If that fails, then we go to the second one, like that.
Hey, Prabhat, I have a little question.
Sure.
Is WS02 considering providing a hosted version of the identity server?
Yes. So that we are working on. So we have API cloud and app cloud at the moment. So we are now going to start working on the identity cloud. So one thing we want to change is, so like we can directly like straight away host the identity server in the cloud and make it available to the people who want to use that. But then again, we identify the management console we have today won't that much appealing to the end user. So we are doing some improvements to the UI and the way you do stuff in the identity server to make it much user friendly. So that's what we are doing at the moment, and once that is done, we will release it to the cloud and we'll host it as a service. Yeah.
Oh, great. I'm just curious now, and you may not know or want to discuss it, but how much would that service cost?
Yeah, so that I don't have like a direct idea about that, but I can get back to you on the cost of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the next one is single sign-on and federation. So this is the strongest feature in the identity server. So we support multiple heterogeneous protocols: OpenID, SAML, Kerberos, WS Federation, OpenID Connect, like that. So I'll do a demo on this too, so you'll understand better what we do. Okay. So this is a one diagram which shows you the benefit of having a single server which supports multiple heterogeneous protocols. So you deploy identity server over your LDAP or your Active Directory, your internal user store. Then if you have an enterprise account in Google Apps or Salesforce, you can connect to the users can connect to those cloud services through standard protocols they support. For example, Google supports SAML2, Salesforce support SAML2, and Office 365 support WS Federation. So once you logged into Salesforce, you will be automatically logged into SharePoint. You will be automatically logged in Drupal, Liferay. So having a single server supporting all these standards, you can build a unified single sign-on experience for your users across different heterogeneous applications. And so this is a very primary requirement, very basic requirement of single sign-on. And you can see as we go on how we have extended on this to build more advanced scenarios, do like protocol transformations built on between these standards. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about, the identity bridge. So if you look at the way companies grow today, most of the time that's through acquisitions, mergers, or partnerships. So when you do a merge or a partnership, that also brings a lot of challenges. How do we integrate between different systems in those two entities, right? Let's say we have a company called Foo, right? And we have a set of service providers or web applications, and also we have identity providers. and this identity provider in foo domain is deployed over an active directory of the foo domain. Now all your applications in that domain can participate in a single sign-on environment connected to that IDP, let's say using SAML, right? So anybody can log into those service providers or the web applications happily through the SAML, through the IDP. So now it's fine. Let's say now we build a partnership with another company called BAR, and we want the users from BAR domain to access the applications in foo domain, right? So that's a federation scenario. So we don't know how to authenticate those users coming from BAR domain to foo domain. Only thing what we can do is we can redirect that users to their own home IDP, that would be the identity provider in the BAR domain, right? So now what's the challenge here? The challenge here, let's say the IDP in the BAR domain supports OpenID Connect. Now our service providers only know to talk SAML, and their IDP only understands OpenID Connect. So there's a conflict. So if you want to resolve that conflict, then either you need to change the code or add support for SAML at the BAR IDP, or else you need to add OpenID Connect support at the service provider in foo domain. To avoid that, so we introduce this identity bridge with the identity bus concept. So you put the identity server in the middle, then identity server is capable of transforming tokens between SAML and OpenID Connect. So this is, I'll do a demo on this. I'll show you how to log into Salesforce using your Facebook account, right? So Salesforce to IDP would be over SAML, IDP to Facebook would be over OAuth, and I'll show you how we do the token transformation and claim transformation. And at the moment, we can transform tokens between any of these protocols. Then again, the beauty of the identity service architecture is we not just rely on these standards. If you think that you have a proprietary protocol, let's say you have a service provider which talks its own protocol to authenticate users in a federation environment, then what you can do is you can write an inbound authenticator to identity server and plug it there. Then you will inherit all the other functionalities from the identity server. You just need to introduce that new inbound authenticator. So one good example is we don't have support for CAS. So once again, CAS is widely used in the academic institutions. So one of our partners, that's Illusion, so they are mostly working with universities. So they got a requirement to build CAS support to identity server. So they did that by writing an inbound authenticator, and the good thing is they contributed that code back to us. That's under Apache 2.0 license, and we are going to add that to our future release. I guess in 5.2.0 we'll add CAS support. But then again, if somebody is interested in, we can provide it as a connector, and you can just deploy it in the identity server. Yeah. So this is for WS Trust or for the SOAP-based use cases. So if you want to get a token from identity server to present to a web service which is secured with WS Trust, so we do support that too. Okay. Then again, so this is something we introduced with IS 5.0, which was released in 2014 June. This is to support multi-option and multi-level authentication. Multi-option authentication means, so you get redirected to the identity server through Salesforce. Now, based on the service provider, identity server can present you options to log in. Either you can log in with username and password, Twitter, OpenID, or Facebook, LinkedIn, like that. In a single page, you can provide multiple login options, and it can be based on service provider. So if you log into if you are trying to log into Salesforce, you will see one set of login options. If you want to log into Google Apps, you will see another set of login options. So that can be configured per service provider. So that's multi-option login. So multi-level login means multi-option logins with the AND. So if you take multi-option, then it's a O between all the authenticators in that step. Multi-step means it's an AND between all the steps. So we present a set of authenticators in the first step. You can pick whatever the authenticator. Let's say you pick username and password. Then we authenticate user with that. Then we take to the next step. Then once again, service provider can define what type of authenticators you need there in the second step. So we'll invoke those authenticators, then move the user to the next step like that. So you can configure steps per service provider, and in my demo I'll show you that too. So once again, so this is how, if you want to enable or add multi-factor authentication to your web application, this is how you do. So multi-level, the multi-factor authentication is a subset of multi-level authentication based on the type of authenticators you have. So if you have username and password for the first step, and if you have Facebook authentication for the second step, that is multi-step, but that is not multi-factor. But if you have username and password for the first step, and if you have FIDO or biometric or fingerprint for the next step, then that becomes multi-factor. So now, when we released Identity Server, we didn't have any connectors to support multi-factor authentication. We had the framework. So we built some connectors. So one is for phone-based authentication. We have one connector for MePin, another one for the Duo security, and also with IS51, which will be released in this November, we added support of FIDO. So FIDO is FIDO U2F. So that's going to be going to be the de facto standard for multi-factor authentication. It's a standard way to communicate between servers and the browser and the devices. Yeah. So any questions?
All right, well, I have a question then. For single sign-on scenarios, a couple of things would be important for this community besides server-to-server authentication. It would also include native mobile application authentication and also desktop client authentication. How would Identity Server help in those scenarios?
Yeah. So yes. So if you take mobile applications, so once again there are many ways that you can do single sign-on between apps in a mobile device. We have developed something called IDP proxy. So this is similar to the Facebook app in your device, right? So if you have Facebook in your iPhone, Facebook application, that is the Facebook application plus an identity proxy for Facebook, right? The way it works is, if you go to Instagram, right, and if you click on associate Facebook there or for the first time, then what happens is the Instagram has a Facebook client library which will check first whether this Facebook app is installed in your device. If it is installed in your device, it will simply call to the API to your Facebook application, and the Facebook application will handle the authentication. It will prompt you, it will redirect to the Facebook, authenticate you, and send back the token back to the Instagram. So now, let's say you for the first time you authenticate to the Facebook app. Now let's say you have another app, let's say Foursquare, right? So if you want to associate Facebook with Foursquare, once again it will check whether the Facebook app is installed in the device. If so, it will talk to the app. Now at that time, the Facebook application, or in this case IDP proxy app, can manage the user session centrally. Now this user is already authenticated, so you don't need to authenticate back. You only need to approve the request from Foursquare, and then the Facebook IDP proxy app will send back the token. So there you get the single sign-on experience using IDP proxy. That's one way. There are other ways too, like you can have you can have basically, instead of talking to the IDP proxy app, you can just spawn the native browser. So that is what would happen if you don't have the Facebook app installed in your application. Instagram will check whether the application is there. If not, it will just invoke the native browser. Having the native browser also, you can experience same behavior. The other approach is, if you want to do like federated authentication for mobile apps, just to have the browser spawn up in a web view. But the challenge here is web view session is only for that particular application. So each application you need to log in again, right? So what we have developed is similar to Facebook application. It's an IDP proxy app you can install in a mobile device. Then we have an SDK. So in your mobile apps you can talk to our APIs. Then identity server will handle the IDP proxy will handle all the handshake between the identity server. So you don't need to deal with or handle any OpenID Connect or SAML stuff in your app. Then once again, so these APIs are not standards, right? So if you want to talk to Facebook IDP proxy, then your application should use Facebook SDK. If you want to talk to WS02 IDP proxy, you need to use WS02 SDK. So to overcome this challenge, there's a working group called NAPS, Native Application Working Group, that is under OpenID Connect Working Group Foundation. They have introduced this standard called NAPS, where it standardizes all the communication between the application and the proxy app, and also from there to the server that's built on top of OpenID Connect, and we are in the process of supporting NAPS as well. And there are identity vendors that support NAPS. If you go to OneLogin, so there are like cloud identity provider, so they do have NAPS support too. And for desktop applications, there are different ways of doing single sign-on, and so that's mostly called as enterprise SSO or ESSO, like when you combine web SSO and desktop login. But identity server focus is not on ESSO, so we don't at the moment focus on providing single sign-on for desktop applications. We only focus on web applications. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, Prabhat, this is Suresh, and I have a question on the, I'm not sure if it's a multi-option or a factor here. So let's say if you log into a gateway portal in the front page, and then from that portal, let's say you're accessing Amazon AWS services, like spinning up VMs or S3, and if Amazon has the two-factor authentication, so how would you consider that scenario? The first option, so you have a two-factor authentication at the basic portal level, and then there is a delegation, you need to delegate to a second service which also require a two-factor authentication?
Yeah. Yes. So I'll get back to that. So I'll show you a demo first, right? So then I'll get back to your question, right?
Yes.
Let's say my use case is, this is a basic, I'll start with a very basic use case. I want to log into Salesforce with my enterprise credentials, right? So in that case, from identity server's point of view, the Salesforce is a service provider, right? Can you see my browser now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I log into the identity server. Right. Now I need to represent Salesforce here as a service provider, right? So I need to go to service providers here, add service provider, and provide details, right? So I have already done that. I'll show you that configuration. This is to log into my facile login domain of Salesforce. Okay, I'll edit the configuration and show you. So these are the key elements we need to worry about here. So the key element here is the inbound authentication configuration, right? So that talks about how the service provider talks to the identity server, right? From identity server's point of view, this is an inbound authentication request. So when you go to Salesforce will send a request to the identity server. Inbound authentication configuration talks about how to pass this request and how to understand this request coming from Salesforce, right? So if you expand this one, so you can see these are the standards of protocols we support or we understand in inbound authentication request. So once again, as I mentioned before, these are not limited. This is what we support out of the box. If you think there are any protocol that we don't support, you can add it. For example, the cache protocol, once you write it as an inbound authenticator and put it in the system, it will appear here automatically. So now in this case, Salesforce usually talks to us using SAML, right? So now we'll go to SAML configuration here, and I need to configure SAML, right? So I need to specify where to send the assertions, what attributes need to be sent. So everything I set up here. Now I am ready to accept a SAML request from Salesforce, and I know how to generate a SAML response to Salesforce. That is what we configured here, right? So let's see what happens. Okay. The other thing is, in most of these federation protocols, all of them talk about how to transport a request from one place to another place and response from one place to another place, right? None of these talk about how to authenticate the user. How to authenticate the user is totally up to the identity provider, right? It can be username, password, multi-factor authentication, and anything. Now in identity server, per service provider, you can configure it here under local and outbound authentication configuration. So this tells identity server, if the request comes from Salesforce, authenticate the user in this way. So I'll start with basic authentication. You just need to check local authentication and pick basic here. So these are the authenticators we support. I'll get back to that later. Okay, so this is configured. So now what happens, whenever request comes from Salesforce, we'll give you username and password based authentication. So I'll show it here. So if you go to Salesforce, so now I am on identity server, right? Okay. So identity server gets a SAML request. It authenticates the user using username and password, then I got redirected to Salesforce. So that's the basic use case. Now let's say I want to enable multi-option authentication to users coming from Salesforce, right? So here, let's say I need to have username and password plus Facebook authentication, right? Now from identity server side, Facebook is an identity provider, right? So Facebook has its own users. Facebook knows how to authenticate those users, and Facebook can share user attributes with us. So from identity server's point of view, Facebook is an IDP. So first you need to go here and add Facebook as an IDP. So I have already done that. I'll show you that configuration. So just IDP metadata, right? So this has various other configurations too. Basically, this is the representation of Facebook in identity server, and looking at this configuration, identity server should know how to talk to Facebook. Now, to talk to Facebook, we need to have a connector, so that we call as federated authenticators. So once again, these are the authenticators we do support out of the box, but you can try your own authenticator. In this case, the connection to Facebook through identity server is to 0020. So you can simply use this connector too, but then again we have made it easy. So you can just use this Facebook configuration. Just put your client ID and client secret here, that's it. So now we have representation of Facebook, and identity server knows how to talk to Facebook. Now we need to associate this Facebook authentication into the authentication flow of this Salesforce. So that means whenever a request comes from the Salesforce, there should be a way we should present to the user this Facebook login option. So you go to the Salesforce service provider, and under local and inbound authentication configuration, you pick advanced configuration, and in step 1, so you can configure multiple steps, you can see basic authentication is already there, and we add Facebook authentication, right? Update, that's it. Now if you go to this here, you should see multiple options, right? So you can either log in with username and password or using Facebook. So I'll click on Facebook here. Now it will take me to Facebook, right? Okay, I'll log in with my Facebook credentials. And internally the identity server will do the transformation. You get an WS02 response, a JWT, when you get the claims, and then you transform it to SAML response and send it back. So now I am logged into to Salesforce using Facebook authentication. And if you want, like, so in this case we gave multiple options to the user, right? Login with username, either login with username or password. Let's say you don't need multiple options, you just need to log into Salesforce with Facebook, right? So the experience should be seamless. Like when you go to Salesforce, you should be automatically redirected to Facebook. You won't see any page in the middle. So if you want to do that, go here, local inbound authentication, federated authentication, and just pick Facebook there. So this will list out all the IDPs or IDPs. You pick Facebook here, update, that's it. Now if you go here, right, so I try to log into my Salesforce domain, I should ended up in Facebook, right? It didn't even there's a redirection, but you won't see any page in the middle. So I can log in here. So internal identity server will do all the claim transformations and everything, and now I'm logging to Facebook. So that's multi-option authentication. Now let's say if you want to do multi-step, right? So here, if you go back here, local and inbound authentication configuration, advanced configuration. In step 1, let's remove the Facebook. Okay, let's remove it. Add username and password, and we can add another step. So second step, we'll add Facebook, right? So that means you authenticate first with username and password. Then in the next step, you will be presented the Facebook login option, right? Okay, that's fine. So we'll, okay, update. And another option is, you can also specify from which step you need to take the user attributes and the subject name to the SAML response, right? Okay, done that. So now what should happen when I go to Salesforce? It should first redirect me to the identity server's login page with just username and password. Then when I click on sign in here, this should take me to the Facebook. That's the second step, right? So now I'm on Facebook. So now if I had a multi-factor authenticator here, it can be FIDO or Duo Security or MePin, then you'll be able to log in automatically, right? Yeah. So now I'm logged into Salesforce. So in this case, you can, so this is the concept of bring your own identity too, right? So I haven't shown you one step, that is, like ideally you should not enable anyone from like random person from Facebook to log into Salesforce, right? So this doesn't happen in that way. So there's another step where you associate your Facebook account to your enterprise account. So in this case, this my Facebook account is associated with the admin user, right? So identity server internally find out whether this Facebook account is associated with this particular user, and only if it is an association, you will redirect back to the Facebook, to the Salesforce, otherwise that will fail. So that's the concept of bring your own identity. Right. So that's multi-step and multi-option both. So in this case, Facebook was an IDP and Salesforce is the service provider, right? And then again, we don't have control over how users authenticate to the Facebook, right? So Facebook can enforce their own multi-factor authentication or whatever the authentication mechanism they do, and that's not under our control, right? So to get back to your question, if you go to a service provider, if let's say so the use case is, if I understood it correctly, you want to log into a certain service provider through Amazon. Is that Amazon IDP, right? Is that your requirement? The previous?
No, actually, the service provider has its own IDP, or it could use, let's say, like Facebook or some IDP. But the question is, now that service provider needs to do some delegated action on Amazon. So we need to, and that delegated, we need to associate those two identities somehow. Like let's say that I have my Amazon identity, and I want to give to the first service provider some delegation capability so that they could do some action on Amazon on my behalf. Is that?
Yeah. So the thing is, the access controlling, so we are talking about access controlling of a specific service provider, right?
Yeah.
So even in Salesforce, there are like its own roles and access control rules. So those are managed internally, right? So you cannot control it from outside using the identity server. You need to visit the Salesforce and configure those rules and delegations. From identity server's point of view, only thing you can do is you send the subject identifier to the service provider. Then that service provider can, based on the subject identifier, that particular service provider can enforce access control rules. So that's what we do. But then again, there are other identity management systems that do this kind of stuff, like manage access control centrally. So yesterday we had a identity management meetup at WS02, and one guy from I think that name is Siriwardena. Yes. Yeah. So I guess you can see the screen. Right. This company, they have a product that can connect to any of these service providers: Amazon, Salesforce, Google Labs, Office 365, and then they talk to those service providers through the API and get all the access control rules and resources, all the metadata, to something they call as security warehouse. And then they have a UI where you can centrally access control, do delegation, everything from one page. So you don't need to visit each and every service provider. You can centrally control that, and also you can have like aggregated view and also enforce segregation of duties centrally. So that's a different product. So at the moment we don't do that from the identity server. So we don't worry about the access control rules at the service provider level, and we don't have the capability to control that centrally. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, thanks, Prabhat. I think the demo was very helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving back to the slide, any other questions?
Hi, this is Ryan down at TAC. I have a question about the federation. Everything I've seen just says that federation is generally it boils down to a one-to-one mapping, right? So you take an external ID and you map it to the internal one, like you've shown, or you map from one IDP to another through WS02 to streamline that login. But how do you handle the aggregation of multiple accounts? So if someone has 3 or 4 different accounts they want to log in, potentially log in from and access services protected by OAuth2 server, how would they accomplish that?
Yeah. So yes. So there are two angles, right? The way we address that problem. So one is, so you have a single enterprise login, right? Which is in the user store behind the identity server. Then the same user can have multiple accounts at different IDPs, right? So for example, I have account, let's say Prabhat, in my local user store, and I have my own Facebook account, my own Twitter account, my own LinkedIn account with external IDPs. We have a feature where you can map those external accounts to your enterprise account, right? So that means whenever you log in to a service provider through any of these IDPs, we can, if the IDP needs to get the corresponding subject in our user store, then they have to do this check, right? So if you go here, local inbound authentication configuration, this check. Assert identity using mapped local subject identifier, right? So you may log into the system with any of your associated social accounts, but what we return back to the service provider is what we have in the user store, right? If you don't have this check, we just send the subject coming from the external IDP. So there we map a single enterprise account to multiple social accounts, right? That's one aspect. The second one is you can have multiple accounts in the identity server itself, right? So this could easily happen if you try to build, like, aggregate multiple legacy systems to build a unified view, right? So we have seen, like, different departments maintain their own user stores. HR department has its own user store. Engineering department has its own user store. Marketing department has its own user store. And there are people who work across these departments too. So for them, they have duplicate accounts but with different names, right? Now, if you want to build an aggregated view across the company, across these departments, then what you do is you have the identity server, and identity server will basically all these three user stores will get mounted into the identity server under different domains, right? So now we have given a feature where you can associate. So now that means for the Prabhat user has different accounts in three different user stores under same identity server, right? They may have different credentials too. So now what we do is we have a feature which comes in IS 5.1. You can associate all these three accounts together, right? Then whenever you authenticate back, when you send a response back to the service provider, you can pick it's like multiple profiles, right? You can pick how you want to authenticate or send the response back to the service provider, or through which attributes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just unclear about this works great when you're in theory when you're working from the web, but how do you handle when you're doing server-to-server interaction and you can't walk the redirects for the users? How do you handle their third-party authentication keys, and how do you pass on the level of assurance, meaning the context in which they originally logged in with if you're mapping to a single internal account?
Sorry, can you please come back?
Yeah, so if you have multiple external accounts, third-party, Facebook, Google, Salesforce, and you're mapping to a common internal account, that's going to work fine over the web, but what happens if you're accessing the identity server without a browser, right? How do you validate that flow then? And assuming you can do that, when I'm making a call out to whatever my protected resource is, how am I going to pass on the information about the mechanism with which I use to log in, so that I have some level of assurance about whether it was sufficient for me to log in with that user with that account and that service to access this protected resource?
Yes. Okay. So the connection to the external IDPs, right? So in this case, all are based on browser-based federation protocols, right? So we don't keep any keys of those users. So those users has to be actively involved there, and they need to authenticate those IDPs, and what we get the assertion, right? And then again, those attributes. So when you authenticate against Facebook or an external IDP, we can provision those users to our internal user store, right? So for each entity coming from the external IDP, we can, if you enable just-in-time provisioning, right? If you go to IDP here, right? IDP here, and if you enable just-in-time provisioning, right? Then what would happen is there will be a user created, and we can map all these user accounts with attributes to a single entity, right? Then the question is, without this web redirections, when you access identity server, right? Then the question comes there is, to which purpose you are accessing identity server or which API you call, right? So identity server has multiple APIs. So if you just talk to authentication API of the identity server, then you cannot pass username and password. You cannot authenticate with external IDPs. You need to authenticate with your local credentials that is under the identity server user store, right? So in that case, you cannot pass any like level of assurance or anything. But in case of web-based authentication, we can pass you back. In fact, if you enable, we can pass back the set of IDPs the user authenticated to the service provider. So based on that, service provider can decide, okay, whether I should allow this user or not. So that will be assigned JWT, so the service provider can validate it. But in terms of direct API calls, for authentication, then we don't like talk to IDPs. It has to be a local authentication. The user should have its own local credentials.
Okay. Last question, if I can squeeze in one more.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Marlon?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So this audience, it's I'm sure there's a lot of use cases out there that I don't know about, but I rarely run into people that are trying to integrate with Facebook and Office 365. I do run into a lot of use cases where people want to pull off federated access with Incommon and their shibboleth server, and we've done that. I mean, we have it working, but it was not a friendly process. What do you have recommendations? Other places you can point where that's been done? I mean, what's the mechanism that this audience might turn to pull off that?
Yeah. So the Facebook integration should be quite easy, like as I just showed you. And for Incommon, right? So Incommon Federation is based on SAML 2.0, and they have specific requirements on SAML, and we do facilitate all those requirements. And other than that, they also have a requirement that or a like recommendation. We talk to the metadata endpoints of the service providers, and then we update our data by passing the metadata, those stuff, and that we didn't have. So we added that support. In fact, that was added by Illusion. So they have, I can show you in fact what they have done. Yeah, this one. So this is what we did for to support Incommon. Right. So these are the basic requirements for Incommon, and this is what we support out of the box. And some of they are there. Some of the requirements are there, but those are not required, just optional. And we can do all this claim mapping through identity service claim mapping configuration. And we have added the component called this Incommon, but this is once again still not in the product. This is what they have developed. So there you can configure like how frequently we can connect to read the metadata from the service provider metadata endpoints. So yes, at high level, at identity server 5.0, it doesn't have the complete support for Incommon. Like it doesn't satisfy all the criteria expected in a Incommon federation, but we have implemented that. So anybody interested, we can share those components. So the integration would be seamless. Like it's basically you point to a metadata endpoint, and we read the data from there and configure the service provider.
So I personally would be interested in hearing about that, but where did you validate that at? Where did you install, and what Incommon service provider did you configure that against to verify that it works in a real world scenario?
Yes, so basically I didn't involve in this directly. This was done by Illusion. So I'm not quite aware like how they tested it. So ideally, like identity server installed as a service provider, and you should be able to point to any so identity service is the identity provider. You should configure it to talk to any service provider, and here you can see we give the service provider endpoints. So yes, so I haven't tested this in an in-common federation scenario. This is totally done by one of our customers called Illusion, and they have contributed this back to us.
So, Prabhat, I think what Ryan is asking is general interest to this community. So did the contribution come back to the open source version, or will it come?
So they have contributed this back to us. So it's open source, but we haven't released this as a product. So if somebody is interested, we can share that component, and so we need to do some changes to improve what they have done. So once that is done, we'll release it.
Yeah.
So I have
good.
Marlon, I have a quick question. What kind of support do you offer for these sorts of non-standard, non-release components?
Okay. The way things happen is the way we add features to identity service, we closely observe the trends and standards and what's happening in the domain. Then we identify to add support for these connectors are strategically important for us. Then we do that. Then again we get requests from customers, and most of the customers, even they develop any custom connectors, if we identify this is a generic connector and there can be many customers who would need this connector, then we give them a 50% discount. So that is under open source development license. So if they agree to do that, then we get the component, we own the component, and we contribute it back to the community. So everything will be Apache 2.0 license. So that's how we developed the MePin connector. So MePin was developed for a specific customer, and so we gave them a 50% discount for open source contribution, and then we contributed it back. So that's how we proceed as a product. Any requirement that we identify as would add value to our customers and community, we try to make it open source, giving a discount to the customer, because customer is the one who is going to pay for that particular development. Yeah.
Right, but I guess what I mean is, so this isn't contributing something, but if, say, this in-common extension is going to be interesting to people on the call, and they want to get this, and they'll probably have questions or hit bugs or need some sort of support. How will that be supported before it's officially released?
Yes. So you can raise any questions through our dev at WS02 mailing list and request for these connectors. But this is still at early stage, so it would take some time to make it fit into the server product and release it. So if you take this particular scenario, the Illusion guys, they have the identity server and they brand it as Illusion Identity Service. And so here is the same identity server, but they have developed this connector and put it there. But we may not be able to use it as it is in our product when we release it to Apache under Apache 2.0 license. So we would need we need to do some modifications there. But in general, if you won't have any question on custom authenticators or anything, you can do the dev at WS02, and also you can raise your question in Stack Overflow and tag it as WS02. So those questions will be answered, and that's the free thing. But then again, if you are interested about getting paid support, so that's also available. You can get development support. So most of the development support to ask questions and those stuff. So the difference is for the free support there is no SLA, but we try our best to contribute answer in as soon as possible. But for the paid support there's an SLA, so there's a guarantee that you will get a response back within a specified time period.
So we've had lots of questions, and we're at the top of the hour. So, and I think we're kind of still in the middle of your talk. Can you, Prabhat, can you wrap us up in about 5 minutes, and maybe we'll.
Yeah. I'll quickly go through, but that's fine anyway. Well, this is the strongest area of IS, so it's fine, yeah. So this is what I explained you before, right? Then for provisioning also we do support scheme-based provisioning and SPML. So schemes we support both inbound and outbound requests. So that means if you want to add the user to identity server, you can send it as a scheme request. So that's based on JSON and REST. And we do support outbound provisioning through scheme, SPML, and we have written 2 connectors for Salesforce and Google Apps. So you send a scheme request to the admin server, then you can specify to where you need to outbound provision this user. Then based on that, we can provision this user to Google Apps, Salesforce, or to any SPML provider or scheme provider. So one use case would be, say you have account in Google Apps, so you need to provision users to Google Apps, right? So anybody who joins your company need to be in Google Apps. So what we do is, when you add a user from the identity server's management console or through API, you can configure that user to be provisioned to Google Apps. But then again, you don't need to provision all your users to Salesforce. Only the people in sales team should be provisioned to Salesforce. So you can do conditional provisioning, right? So we provision users to Salesforce only if when they are promoted to sales team role. So that kind of features are available in IS. So once again, all these connectors are extensible. You can write your own provisioning connector. Yeah, so this is about auditing and WS Trust. And the other key feature is the role-based access control and attribute-based access control with SACML. So we do support SACML 2.0 and SACML 3.0 both. And also we have a policy wizard. Like you don't need to know SACML in detail, but that will help you. So we have a set of wizards. You can just go through and do attribute-based access control policies and role-based access control policies. And this is the dashboard, the end user dashboard, where the end user can log in and do profile updates, set security questions, those stuff. So to go there, you need to go to localhost 9443/dashboard. Okay, this is what you see. And in summary, this is what we support. We support user stores with LDAP, Active Directory with JDBC, and once again, you can extend that. And we do support multiple user stores. And we support OpenID, SAML2, Kerberos, OpenID Connect, and we do integrated Windows authentication too. So that's another authenticator. So that means if you have enabled IWA for Salesforce, if you log into a Windows domain, you will be automatically logged into Salesforce, right? And we do support multi-option, multi-step authentication, ID bridging, provisioning, SACML, then OAuth 1.0, 2.0, STS with WS Trust. Scheme 1.1, WS SACML is to communicate between a SACML PEP and a PDP, and WS Federation Passive Profile, another Federation protocol. So that is how we talk to Office 365 and even SharePoint. Yes, so that's it, yeah.
Oh, great. That really got it done in 4 minutes. So any questions? Okay, so I have a general question then, which is, so let's say I'm running a Science Gateway and I've based it on, maybe I have my own data store already that I implemented in MySQL, or maybe I'm basing my gateway on some well-known content management system, Drupal or Joomla or Liferay or something like that. And so, you know, can WS02 Identity Server scale down to help me? Is you know, there are lots of standards, lots of cool features and things for some pretty sophisticated use cases.
Yeah.
How is WS02 Identity Server going to help me in my kind of basic vanilla use case?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So if you look at how we, like, I mentioned before, we have like 20 plus products, right? So why we can add more and more products is due to the way we develop components, right? So all our development is based on OSGI. All these features are OSGI features, right? So in Identity Server, so when you develop features, you do not to worry about product, right? OpenID Connect is a one feature. SAML is a one feature. If you take ESB mediation is a one feature. Application hosting is a one feature. So we have these individual features, and we group these features to build the product, right? So in Identity Server, we group SAML, OpenID Connect, user management, those stuff, and call it as Identity Server. In our application server, we group clustering feature, user management feature, application hosting feature, web app hosting feature, and then we call as application server, right? So it's a collection of features that becomes a product. Now the question is, you don't need all these features, right? You need to remove that. So we have option, if you want to remove any of these features, or even if you want to add new features to product. So this is same as what you see in Eclipse, right? So we use P2 here. If you go to configure features here, you can see all the installed features, right? So if you do not want to use SACML or if you just want to use SAML, you can uninstall all the other features. You don't need to have those features there, and then you can build a very lightweight runtime. In fact, we did that. So we had a requirement from like one supermarket chain. So they are very big supermarket chain, but they had a requirement in their stores. They have a machine. They have machines with 1 GB RAM, right? And we should, but for the Identity Server, we are only going to get 100 MB, right? We should not have a heap size, more than 100 MB. So what we did was, we removed all the unnecessary features, we just got what they need, and then we could start the Identity Server with 64 MB heap size, but we couldn't meet the performance requirements, but at around 120 MB heap size, we could meet the performance number. So bottom line is, yes, so you can remove all unnecessary features from there and build a lightweight IS to cater your function. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks. Any other questions?
Well, this is Don at NCAR. I just had a more general question is, what is the overlap and comparison to the work that's coming out of Internet 2? We've talked some about various pieces of that, I think, today.
Yeah, so your question is Internet 2?
Internet 2 with InCommon, SHIB, so forth.
Yeah. Yes. So the thing is, our vision is, right, so we don't specifically focus on a protocol, right? So if you look at even in InCommon, like anything, so if you look at identity domain in last decade, so there's a new standard coming up every year, right? So OpenID came in 2007, 2006, yes, and now everyone is going to disconnect OpenID by it's, I think, already disconnected, right? So Yahoo, Google, so they all disconnected OpenID support. Mm-hmm. But SAML is already there. So what we see as a future is not a given specific protocol. What we see in the future is how good you can mediate between these new protocols and how better your product can adapt to new protocols. So even in the InCommon scenario, so we had SAML support, but it highlights certain specific areas, so we need to add those stuff. So yes, so that's our focus, like to make the Identity Server more flexible, to adapt into new standards and protocols.
Okay.
Any last question?
Yeah. And one more thing, from Identity Server 5.1, which will be released in November, we have added workflow support. So that means whenever you add a user, you can associate a workflow, which also integrates with human tasks. So it will send a message to a set of roles or set of users, and once that is approved, it will get provisioned to the user store. So that's a new feature coming in 5.1.
One last simple question. So if people are interested in trying this out, they should go WS02 website and click through from there. Should be easy to find the download.
Yeah, if you go to WS02.org and products, you can just go to the identity server page, and from there you can download it. Yeah.
I'll also throw out there, it was kind of brutal for us going through the learning curve on Identity Server just because there's so much stuff that they've done and they've got so many great features in there. And we open sourced the instance that we run for Agave that's kind of tailored towards the academic environment. We also Dockerized it, so we have images out there you can pull down and just run out of the box and kind of tweak from there. I know WS02 is moving that direction as well. But if anyone needs those, we have those available.
What's a URL for that, please? Or just
go to agaveapi.co and shoot us an email, or you can check out our Docker repository there and there.
All right. Yeah, thanks very much. And you have also Prabhath's email address if you wanted to. I assume, Prabhath, you don't mind answering any other questions people might have offline?
Yeah, please, send me any questions,
Oh, can you stop